Hi, Lila.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Sarah.
Hey,
Hi.
can you hear me?
It's like, 30 seconds till 6 o'clock. And I thought, is this the wrong?
Oh,
Oh, there's Todd. So, okay.
I think we're good.
Worried,
We're waiting till the last minute, I guess.
I guess.
I was trying to get my boys fed because they come home from track and they're both ravenous and they're like these empty vessels that I just have to keep putting food into. So Pretty sure they're on dinner number 2 already.
We've got all the dog lovers on.
That's right.
How is your pup doing?
He's doing great. Oh my God, that guy has brought so much joy into my life.
Does he get to come on the video?
What's that?
Does he get to come on the video?
I hope he will. Yeah, he's outside right now. Now, the only way he'll go outside when I'm home is if I leave the doors open. I can't send him out. I can't open the door and send him out. He won't go unless I go first. And if I come in, he comes in. So he's enjoying the outdoors right now only because he can come and go. So maybe he'll come and say hello.
Make an appearance.
Yeah. Lilia is texting me. She was letting me know that she found a couple of stray dogs in her yard, and she's trying to get the situation sorted out. So there's one of them, and there's another one. It's another little dog. Oops, let me see if I can get it in focus.
Oh, buddy.
Yeah, so the dogs are the thing, right? Well, now we've got 5 dog lovers.
That's right.
Yep.
Is that a requirement?
That's the board requirement, yes.
Yeah.
The dog lovers rule. Well, I hope he'll come in. He's at my he's starting to feel a little better about not being, so that's good. But I miss his codependence too. So
Figure out maybe how old he is?
we haven't. I think he still has his puppy teeth, which would make him about six months, right? But he's a big one if he's 6 months. Yeah.
Wow.
The reason I say that is because they're razor sharp. You know, when he bites me with them, they hurt. Unlike a dog older dog, when he kind of play with you, it doesn't not so troubling. But
is he a chewer, Todd?
Not bad. No. He likes to get my shoes and slippers and walk around with them, and he shakes them a little bit, but he doesn't tear into them. And he tore up the edge of our carpet. So we've been planning on getting a new carpet anyway, so that's not a problem. But no, he doesn't really chew. That's good. He eats though. I mean, he jumps, and if he wants to eat, he can't wait. You know, it's hard to contain himself.
Is he filling out at all, Todd?
He is. In fact, he's grown quite a bit. I'm surprised if I look at the pictures of when I first got him compared to that. He's already noticeably taller than Chester, both his back and his head now. So they were just about the same size. He was a little bit smaller than Chester when he came 3 weeks ago. So, and I noticed today, you know, I don't see that spine that I saw. I still see some ribs, but he's even widening out there. So
good news.
Yeah. So there's Dick Burkhart and Tom Mosier, and looks like Lila's on too. She's not got her camera on, but
since I was nominated to the board here, I thought I might check it out first.
Great. see what you've gotten yourself into.
Right.
Hopefully you're a dog lover. We were just talking about that being a requirement. I don't know.
We have a cat in our household, but there used to be dogs. So.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
We do cats too.
It's usually the opposite. People say we used to have cats in our house, but now they're dogs.
Well, the dogs were favorites of others.
Yeah.
They were always too big and husky for some of us. The cats we needed to keep out the rats and the mice.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
They do a good job of that. Oh, I just told a few of you, but Lilia is, speaking of dogs, a couple of stray dogs showed up in her yard, so she's trying to sort it out. I don't know if that means she's trying to find their owners or what, but obviously somebody's pets. They're seem to be friendly and well cared for. So
How is Chester liking your new dog? It's Wiley, right?
yeah, for the first couple of weeks, Chester was really depressed, and I didn't see much of him. And then they got to playing, and now their ritual every morning is to spend about an hour wrestling.
There he is.
Here's Wiley.
Oh,
There's my little baby. That's my little baby. What you doing?
What have you gotten yourself into, Todd?
I know.
loves you.
Marmaduke kid. Don't fall now. All right, go ahead and fall. He doesn't jump. He spills. He just kind of spills into whatever position he's going to be in next.
I love him.
Well, I wonder if we should get started. It's
There's 5 of us.
5 after. Yeah. Okay, so I'll call the meeting to order and ask if anybody has any amendments to the agenda for tonight. Okay, if not, then maybe Todd could begin with opening words.
Yes, I have one brief sentence from Archbishop Desmond Tutu that someone recently sent to me, which I just love. It says, all of our humanity is dependent upon recognizing the humanity in others.
So true. Well, my president's report is not very long, except to say many, many thanks to Candace, who is, as we speak, probably recording what's going on here. Thank you so much, Candace.
I am. So did we approve the minutes from last month?
Oh, sorry, missed that part. Thank you. Are any changes that we need to make for the minutes? With that objection, then we'll approve the minutes.
Okay.
And so my thanks to Candace was the main thing that I wanted to say. Also, I really appreciate your sermons. These last 3 or 4 sermons in a row, Todd, they've been great. I've just really gotten a lot out of them. So thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And I'm sure that our online community and people far and wide are enjoying them as well. Have we continued to have new people voice any interest in attending with us that you know of?
Well, I'm not 100% sure of that. Since most of them are on stream, I don't keep up with that. I know that the Zoom is held pretty steady. We did recently have another new member orientation and had 3 of our newer members join out of that. So that's good. And yeah, I think that, we've had a couple of interesting things happen recently. One big one was actually that podcast. I've had several people reach out to me who have been UUs, a couple of them really sort of just ready to abandon it, and then they heard that podcast and realized, oh, there's something going on out there that might help us revive this. So they've gotten involved in NAU through that. And then the NAUA itself, I think, has sparked a lot of interest. So I just ran into a reporter today from Inlander at a coffee shop. And he said, "Oh, I listened to that. I heard that podcast." He said, "I so wish that the Inlander, we should have done something about that story." And said, "It's not too late. I've started the NAUA. That's fresh news, you know." So we'll see if he gets a hold of me. So that is a very popular podcast, and it's getting around, and people are, a few people are emailing us, and that has my books. Not that I sell a lot of them, but I usually sell about one a day. One or two maybe one day and none the next, but on average about one a day. And it's 26 days into April. This podcast came out April 9th, April 8th, April 9th, something like that. I think it was 148 books this month so far. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's really not that I'm, trying to sell books, but it just, I get a gauge on the interest that's going on out there around what's happening. So that was really a good story. I thought Katie Herzog did an excellent bit of reporting. So,
Todd, do you know if that podcast is available in a transcript form? Some people might find that more, a more accessible way to access the information.
Yeah, I don't know that, Richard. I have to look into it, but I don't think that's standard. I'm not a big podcast person myself, but I don't think that's standard.
And one of the things I was thinking is it might be useful to have, if we did have a transcript form of it, it might be useful to have that posted on our UUCS website, and also a link to the podcast itself, so people could reach it either way that they preferred to.
Yeah, I think there's a link in our online newsletter, so that covers that part. Now, if somebody wants to put the work in, there is something that can be done fairly easily. Not to go to too much length here, but in Word, Microsoft Word, you can have it translate a recording. It'll translate it into language. You just have to then go in and put in the proper spaces and identify who's speaking, that kind of thing. But it actually recognizes the voice differences. It'll say speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3. Pretty good, yeah.
And that's available in Word.
In Word, yeah.
Okay.
And is there anything else that we need to hear from you about for your minister's report?
Well, if you want me to go ahead and move forward with the minister's report, I'm happy to. I did have just a couple of other things. I wanted to give you a pledge update up to this point. So far, we've raised approximately $210,000, which that's 80 pledges. And last year, at the end of the pledge, we had 311.4 thousand, and that was with 162 pledges. So we still have a ways to go on pledges, get some of the procrastinators. And then it's usually a matter of actually calling some people and verifying that they're wanting to keep their pledge what it was last year. No matter how many times you ask, people tend to think, well, I've already pledged. I'm just, it's ongoing. So they don't want to bother to actually fill out a form. So once we get any kind of verbal or written verification, we'll be able to wrap this up. My guess is we'll probably end the formal pledge campaign this weekend, but do as we usually do, continue working through parts of May to get people to commit before we have the final number. So that is where that is. And then, nothing really new to report on NAUA. It's been very busy since the website launched. I think there's close to 100 formal members and over 200 subscribers now. So, and this is without us promoting it. I've not worked to promote it. We've got a very adequate website. Somebody donated his time and expertise to get something up so we could start, but it's not the final website that we will have. So I've been wanting to make sure that some of the bugs were worked out, particularly around email communications, before we really start to try to let people know it's out there and we're looking for members. But despite that, we've had quite a lot of interest already. So we'll be working on improving the website in the coming weeks. But it's been kind of an exciting launch given the amount of interest. The other thing I would report is that one group in Hayward, you'll read about it in this next edition of the Liberal Beacon, the NAUA's monthly newsletter, Church in Hayward, that Candace has actually written an article about his forum called the Hayward NAUA Fellowship. Mm-hmm. And I have been in touch with some of these folks from that who at least formed it for a while. A couple of them have actually visited us here in Spokane at different times. And so we've remained in touch. So I think since I'm off for the next two weekends, next weekend I'm gonna go down and spend their Sunday with them. I think that would be a nice thing to do. So that's all I have for now.
Great.
Can I just add also, I think it was a really good decision on your part to, despite our little blip in our congregation not yet becoming an official member of NAUA, and we'll hopefully get that corrected at our annual meeting, but we did send out the NAUA newsletter to every member of our congregation, and I thought that was a really good idea because many of our members believe that we are members of NAUA.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and actually it was a great idea, and it was your idea, Lynn. You may have forgotten that you asked me if we could do that, and we did. It was a brilliant idea, and yeah, that's that's the other interesting thing is we get congregational members, we will automatically fold their members into NAUA membership, right? So that will increase our membership exponentially as well. There was also a congregation in Alabama that has voted last week. The board voted, similar to our board, to join NAUA, and they're going to split their contribution between NAUA and their current contribution between NAUA and UUA, and send the UUA a notice letting them know why. And like our congregation, that also has to be ratified. That decision of the board has to be ratified by the congregation. Their annual meeting will be in May, so that'll be presumably ratified. And then our congregation, I'm assuming, will ratify that vote in June. And so we will have three organizational members, and then all of their members will be folded into our membership as well.
Could I ask a question too, Todd?
Yeah.
How about that breakaway congregation in Austin, Texas, the Open Hearts and Minds Fellowship? Have they shown an interest in joining? I haven't, to my knowledge. I've not heard from them. I don't think anyone that I know who's there anyway has joined NAUA. And that's one thing we will have to do is start working on recruiting and asking people, letting people know we're here, that kind of stuff. And even reaching out to them. I'm not sure where they're at. UUA succeeded in scaring them away from their UU identity, and I don't know if they identify as a UU church anymore or not. I know of 4 of the people in the leadership. And the prime leader, Michael Johnson, is on the board of UMIAC. So I'll email them and try to get a reading on that. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, Tom.
You may have some additional information on this. I've been in communication with Schumann at the Salem Church, and he was asking me what we were doing with our reduced contribution reduced being below what UUA would expect from us, how long we've been doing that, and how did that occur, and did we have any consequences? So I don't know whether that suggests the Salem Church is in obviously some point of indecision or decision.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know either. I was supposed to meet with Rick yesterday, Rick Davis, the minister there, and wasn't able to do so. So I'll find out later. And I know Eric, so I'll reach out to him too, but I want to double check with Rick first before I do that.
Now, one more thing, kind of tied to your report, segue. You gave a report about where we were, 210,000 approximately, which is, you know, a long way short. I think that's just about 2/3 of the way, isn't it not, to what we had intended to raise? So that you're going to be doing phone calling. Who does that phone calling? Is it a staff, or is it part of a generosity team? How does that work, so that I would know and the rest of us would know?
Well, traditionally, it's been a mix of both. I think this year the most of it's going to be done by the staff.
Well, that causes me to ask whether that's in the job description of the staff.
Well, it's not. It's not. There's a lot of things that aren't in the job description of the staff that, you know, specifically that they will fold into. So that'll be one of them.
So that suggests to me that somebody, personnel team or otherwise, somebody needs to be looking at job descriptions and whether they need to be expanded, which would suggest an expansion of pay if they're going to be asked to do more.
No, we don't have, Tom. I mean, we have tasks that aren't in our job descriptions all the time that come up and we take on, and it's not doing more. It's just kind of doing what needs to happen for whatever particular project we're working on at the time. You know, somebody is not always working on the stewardship campaign, for example, or the generosity campaign, but when it comes up, some staff will divert their attention to that. It'd be impossible for us to write everything down that we do and not cripple ourselves and prevent ourselves from getting things done that we didn't think of.
Well, I'll just make one final comment, then you all can move on. In the past, we've had a generosity team that has been composed of church members, and it seems like I'm getting the feeling that that's not taking place anymore.
Well, we've had a generosity team that has been of some help, yes, and there's been some things the generosity team has not done.
Okay.
Todd, I remember, I don't know if it was the last ops team meeting or the one before, but it was discussed that the members of the operations team would help out in the generosity campaign. But I don't remember if it was spelled out that they would call people.
Yeah, I think there was some discussion that we would be, you know, reworking some of that and asked if the operations team might be interested in helping with some of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, seemed to be a lot of interest in it, but the specific there weren't specifics. Yeah.
Yeah, they expressed willingness to do that, from what I remember.
Candace, so it looks like this might be a good time for operations reports.
Oh, okay. I have 6 items. Todd has already updated you on the generosity campaign, so I won't go over that. The church's new fire alarm system provider is Advanced Fire Systems Incorporated. The company is local and it was able to replace the fire alarms at a much lower rate than the previous supplier. For the new HVAC system, one quote came in at $38,000, and it couldn't be installed by this company until the end of the year. So Rebecca Adams is continuing to gather quotes from other companies. A Spokane American Indian group has rented our building several times over the past several months with no charge assessed to the group for the facility use, as they indicated they would appreciate future use of our building for various events. Rebecca will work on an appropriate parameters for renting to the group. The second Sunday of every month will feature one UUCS team that will be asking for new volunteers from the congregation. I think we're going to call it the volunteer moment. It sounds like NPR. It is hoped this method of advertising for new volunteers will effectively replace the volunteer fair that has been held annually in the past. And lastly, Tom Mosher attended this month's ops team meeting to request clarification on safety procedures during Sunday services. Discussion resulted in the decision to make sure the double doors into the RE wing are closed and locked after the children come in, with the ushers tasked with making sure the doors are locked and being available to unlock them should a parent wish to check on a child or children before the end of the second service. As the intercom system has not been used very frequently in the past to communicate with the adults working with the children in the Thoreau room, it was just decided that those on the usher team and the Children's Chapel volunteers would be trained in its use. And that's it. Any questions?
The one question I have is, if we have an intercom system, is it just it's fallen into disuse? Nobody remembers how to operate it? What?
I don't think people know how that it's there. As far as I understand it, it does work, but I mean, I didn't know it was there.
Neither did I.
Yeah.
Thank you, Candace. Next, we move to the GA delegates. Do we know who the people are going to be for delegates this year?
So I had three names on my list of people to invite and request. And I had two people accept, and that is Tom Mosher and Julie Jose have agreed to do so. I have spoken to Rebecca and given her their names. They will, she's asking that they register themselves because the UUA website asks quite a few questions. And she can't really answer those questions for individuals. And then once people have registered, to just let her know, and then she goes in and just sort of clicks a little button or something that gives them delegate credentials.
And so who are our other delegates, and did we have 7? Is that what we decided last time?
We have 7 slots available, and we have 2 people who have agreed to do so this year.
Oh, I could add a point because I was asked, and I also have the option though of my local church in Seattle, Saltwater U Church. Their board meeting is actually tonight, and I'll know after that board meeting if I've been chosen to be a delegate there. If the answer is no, I'll say yes to Spokane. But I've been sort of testing out the waters at my church where there's been some controversy, but right now things have improved a lot, and I'm hopeful that they will choose me as a delegate.
That's great, Dick. I hope so too. I hope they do that.
But again, if anyone else, it sounds like we'll have plenty of spots, and since you don't have to be there, it's a lot easier to be a delegate than it used to be.
It's much easier, and I am willing to sign in again like last year, but I'm not willing to attend like I did last year. I spent I really wanted to see what it was like last year. I really did want to do that. I don't want to ever do that again, but I'm happy to, if I have to, if we can't find anybody else to do it, I am happy to go in and if somebody will say it's time to vote or the ballots are open. That's what happened last year, was they're open for a good length of time, like several hours on the days that they were voting. And I will thank you, Dick, sort of retro thanking you. You were very instrumental in helping us kind of guide us through that whole procedure last year. It was a new
yeah, and I'd be happy to work with, because I'll be a delegate one way or another, either for saltwater or for you guys, and I'll be happy to work with anyone else who wants to be even just like a part-time delegate and know when to vote, or if they want advice how to vote.
Right.
People may want to go just to a few sessions, not necessarily all of them, and that's okay. But I could make little reports to everyone who's like maybe they don't want to attend everything, but if they're a delegate, I can make regular reports to them and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Jean has her hand up here. Would you like to speak, Jean? You're on mute right now.
Okay. Yes. I noticed in the announcement about delegates that it said the board was looking for people, but it didn't specifically invite members of the congregation to step forward if they wanted to be a delegate. And I think if you would word it in such a way that everyone is invited to be a delegate, you might get some more people that would want to do that.
And again, you might add to that, there are experienced delegates like myself that will be willing to help out newcomers.
And I'm willing to attend just for voting purposes myself. Again, if we don't have enough other people to fill all of our 7 spots.
Same here.
Well, we do have just a little bit of time, so maybe I think that's a great idea if we just change the wording and make it an open invitation for people who want to. And those of us who don't, my heart is not in it, and don't really want to, could hopefully step aside and let people who might really be interested in doing that. So thanks, Jean. I think if we reword that, it's a good idea to try.
I'm totally unfamiliar with it, and my personal life is, most as you know, pretty overwhelming at this point. I'm just going to be one who goes in after some kind of a meeting and votes because I can't possibly attend everything. So I'm just going to be a voter. So you might explain in whatever explanation you have that to invite people that there is an option for extensive involvement or limited involvement, including voting, if that is in fact the case. And I'm going to have somebody tutor me as to how to even sign up now that the ball's in my court as far as doing something that further complicates my life at this point. So I'm going to need some help.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. And in addition to mentioning that you can be involved as to the greatest degree you wish, or a much more limited degree, that there will also be from Dick Burkhart some assistance and guidance on.
And it's not hard to sign up, but as I remember rightly, they ask a lot of questions on identity issues and things like that, and sometimes I just answer other or whatever, you know.
So it sounds like maybe we're ready to begin the annual meeting planning part of our discussion. Where should we begin that?
I think one of the things is to make an adequate list of a timeline is to when things have to be presented to the congregation, so that what the board's responsibilities are there. So just so you can probably, I think that's somewhere already. You don't have to reinvent it, but that would include things like
you know, when do you start talking and presenting the budget, and, you know, having it in the back, and have board members there to answer questions about it, as far as beginning to promote the date and when it's happening, you know, those sort of things that will be part of the board's responsibility. The other thing we have to work out that'll be different this year is figuring out the best way to include votes from people who might not be here in person, but are members that will be able to do so on Zoom. And so there's been some preliminary ideas about that already, how that might work, but it's probably going to, of a minimum, at least require one laptop and one volunteer, probably a board volunteer, to monitor those votes and make sure that the people who are voting are actually on the members list, and then be able to convey those votes when counting goes on. So we have to figure that piece of it out. That's a new piece this year. We might, you know, say we want to have two laptops and you know, 4 eyes in order to just, you know, just in case there's more people on Zoom than we would expect. We do have an awful lot of local members who stream. We know that, you know, about 80% of the folks who stream are local. So it could be some would rather take advantage of a Zoom than to actually come in person. So I doubt that. I think that we probably won't have as many as we will in person. However, we don't know. So we need to be prepared.
Oh, go ahead.
I wanted to hear the board's thoughts about kindly requesting that people who are local and able to attend in person, because having a person manage the Zoom and a lot more people intending to participate via Zoom is a big deal. It's a lot to manage while you're trying to be in person in a meeting also. So I don't know how you all feel about that, but I thought we maybe should have a little bit of a discussion about that. I don't want to require it. Certainly there are some people who can't come to church for whatever reason, and they are local. And I think they should certainly be welcome via Zoom. But if we have more via Zoom than in person, it's tricky.
Mm-hmm. So do we have a plan for including that in the newsletter, or how do we do that encouraging? I guess I'm asking everybody.
Well, I think a hodgepodge. One would be the newsletter for sure. Perhaps a note in the in the Sunday morning handout, and then during the announcement period to make that request. It can be me, it can be a board member, whoever.
Yeah, definitely from the pulpit, each of the services. There's several Sundays in the run-up.
Yeah, because we'll be talking, there'll be a period where we'll be talking about reminding folks that the budget, you know, board members are here to talk about the budget after the service. We can fold it into that announcement very easily, and then continue right on up to the prior announcements regarding the annual meeting itself. Required announcements.
What is our deadline for making the announcements to really fully inform people about what our timeline will be and what we're going to be accomplishing, and getting them all the information they need for voting?
Well, yeah, go ahead, Tom. You can.
Well, the bylaws direct when public notice has to go out 14 days, a minimum of 14 days before the meeting. And that's supposed to include not only the agenda, but the motions that we know, you know, there's some amendment motions, those have to go out. at least a summary of the budget needs to go out. Anything that's going to come before the board, before the congregation that needs the congregational approval is essentially the guideline. And that's one of the reasons you moved your board meeting back one Wednesday in May, so that you would have at least a couple of days before that 14-day deadline kicks in, as far as things going out. And then I roughed out an agenda for you, which is just a starting point for you. So does that answer your question there?
Yeah, that sounds good. And you're right, we're meeting on the 17th in May, so that gives us just a little bit of time for last minute preparations, but it would be nice having a general idea. So thank you, Tom, for that.
We also in the past have had meetings, and I would suggest that we do that, a couple extra meetings, probably at least 2, with as many board members as possible. As long as we let people know what we're doing, we can do that. And I think we should have a discussion about who can do that and who's willing to do that. I'm certainly willing to do it. And Tom, I know that Tom is willing to help us. I'm not sure that the agenda or the suggested agenda or a draft agenda that Tom sent went to all of us. I think it might have just gone to the exec team. I can't remember for sure if everybody has received that. So, so that's a good starting place. And then we also have, Tom has also written the motions out so beautifully. And I know you don't have those yet. I have those. And you don't have them yet because we're still going to discuss some of that stuff tonight from our bylaw proposal amendments that we want to bring forward. So we have a lot already in the works. Thank you, Tom Mosier. But I do think we need to set up a couple of meetings between now and May, because that May meeting is bringing us right close to deadline stuff.
Could I ask what the date is of the congregational meeting?
June 5th.
June 5th? Okay.
Where's the 4th?
Is it not the 5th? Oh.
I'm going to get that on my calendar.
Wait a minute. I might be wrong.
Yeah, 4th.
Yeah, it's the 4th.
Yeah, it's the 4th. Yeah.
Sunday, June 4th.
June 4th.
So maybe we need to meet even like next Wednesday and the one after in order to get things done, or should we have I'm not clear about how many meetings we'll need to get everything done. So maybe we should just schedule one right away and to get a sense of what's going to be necessary to complete things.
That sounds good. And then we can go from there if people are available to come. I don't know, are Wednesday evenings good for people?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm available.
And 6 o'clock is a time?
Sure, that's good.
I'm happy to ask Michelle for a Zoom link and send that out to everybody. Does that work for you, Tom Mosier?
Yes, and you do you do need to if it's going to be the entire board, then you need to get notice out right away. If it's going to be a board workshop kind of oriented mostly around three people, and with others welcome to attend, that makes it more of an informal status. But if you're going to have multiple full board meetings, then we need to go look at the bylaws to see what's pinning you down as far as advertisements as opposed to just people joining in, but there being a designated 3 key persons with the other people being able to be present.
If we have in our minutes, which don't go out, but the board slivers goes out. If we just have something in our board slivers that the board is meeting via Zoom on Wednesday, April, what is that, April 3rd or whatever it is, or May 3rd, that to discuss and plan for the annual meeting, put the Zoom link in there. I mean, it's fine if people want to watch us do that, but it's not a board meeting. We're not doing anything. We're not discussing board matters other than planning for the annual meeting. We're not taking any votes. We're not. So as long as that's in our board slivers, I mean, I can't imagine, or is it necessary that we send out an individual email by itself with that?
Lynn, I think an individual email will be necessary because the slivers won't go out till next Thursday, a week from tomorrow, because the due date for them was today. So yeah, so I think an individual email to everyone's going to have to do it.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and you need to call it as a workshop for the sole purpose of planning the congregational meeting. There will be no other business considered, and use the term workshop very prominently, and that there won't be any other business considered.
Okay, so I will write that email and ask Rebecca to send that out. Let's see, what's today, Wednesday, as soon as possible. And then also get a Zoom link from Michelle, and that should go out too. Is that correct, Tom? To
yeah.
everybody, to anybody who wants to pop in. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lynn. That sounds good.
Okay.
And you even can say in that email, because it's a workshop for the board to plan the agenda, that observers are welcome, and that, you know, you're not inviting the congregation to get involved in agenda building. You're just letting them observe while the board does its business of planning a congregational meeting.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, probably would be optimal if the Zoom link were included in the original message that goes out.
Yeah, I'll put it in. I'll be sure that's in there. And we're saying like what, 6 to 8 next Wednesday? Does that work?
That sounds fine.
Okay.
Is anyone else having trouble hearing you, Dick? You're very, very faint.
Me too. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so let me check my volume. Thanks.
Well, one of the things that will be involved in the planning is what we're going to be doing about the policies and procedures that we were all sent out to look over. And I know there were a lot of little tiny little word changes. I don't know. What is you guys' preference, Lynn and Tom? Should we go through the changes that you made line by line and have it up on the screen? How would you like to present this?
Well, so what we have tonight, so we're done with annual meeting planning. Is there anything else for that? Are we moving on to the
I think so. It almost feels like when we actually set the time aside to work on the planning, we'll get things done more quickly and easily that way.
Yeah.
For next week, and then let's move on to talking about the policies and procedures.
Okay, so the policies and procedures manual, if you will, or document, is now sort of on hold until following the annual meeting, because we can't update those policies and procedures until the congregation either agrees or disagrees with these proposed bylaw amendments. So the things that the document that I sent to you all is pretty much something that we went through almost in its entirety at our last meeting. And Tom and I were asking you to just review that, make sure that there's nothing else that needed to be changed. We did make the changes that you requested, particularly I think the one was about the operations team rather than the operations manager, about accepting or declining donations, non-monetary donations. Most of those other things we've already talked about, and we didn't have any requests for other changes. We are happy to go through that again tonight. We sort of updated that document also to sort of clarify the colors so that the explanations are now in a light brown color, rather than trying to confuse you with what's new wording, what does red mean, what does blue mean. Red and blue are the same. Yes, Tom.
Just some clarification. The agenda says policies and procedures, and there's been, I think, interchangeably using the term policy and procedures and bylaws. You've told the board that we're setting aside the policy and procedures until after we've gone through some bylaw changes. So what you're talking about right now is bylaws.
I am talking about bylaws right now.
I just want to make that clear.
Which is the work that has come out of the policy and procedures subcommittee work.
Right.
So I am happy to share my screen and share that document again. Or we can, well, I can certainly bring it up and we can just, I hate to go line by line again. We did do most of that line by line work last month. But if you have specific questions or concerns, these are the bylaw changes based on the policies and procedures work that Tom and I are recommending that the board brings forward to the congregation.
Well, Lynn, is there a way, since they've seen 90% of it, there was just like 1 or 2 or 3 items that would be new from what we all went through the last meeting, and there was, there weren't any objections to what happened in the last meeting. Can we just focus? Would it be all right for everybody if we just focused on the ones that have materialized since the last meeting?
Yeah, are they in that particular order? I'm not certain, but let me share my screen with that document.
The ones that come to mind for me was we changed we put some of the endowment in-house policy and procedures in the bylaw, and then there was some adjustments to the amendment one, and those are the ones that I made were the major ones that at least came to mind, unless you have others.
Okay. I'm sorry, Tom, I was concentrating on sharing the screen. And so is there a certain place I should go to?
Well,
or should I just scroll and ask if there are questions for any, or?
Well, just in the interest of time, I would get to the ones that we know kind of got refined in this last, since the last meeting. And those were the ones about the endowment and the ones about the amendments. And those would be at the end. I think they're almost the last articles.
So here's the endowment.
Okay, the blue the blue is what is new. And particularly section 3, which is in effect the internal policies of the endowment team as they exist now, which has to do with the election of members. I think it's probably useful to point out that the endowment team has functioned for a long, long time with 7 members, but the bylaws only required there to be 5 members. And since there's been less work to do, now that they've resolved all the issues about where the money is invested, the endowment team may, and I'm not sure what they decided in their last meeting, may confine themselves to just 5 members. But at any rate, what this says is that it defines the terms and the number of times someone could serve in a term, and how, when they could rejoin the endowment team after a hiatus. So that's essentially what's in that amendment there that's in blue, which is a new section 3.
And this was added, if I remember correctly, Tom, because we were in communication with the endowment team and we just hadn't heard back from them in time for our March meeting to bring this one forward.
Yeah. Yes. We had proposed this to the team and they weren't able to get back to us before we had to go to the last board meeting.
Okay. And then here's the amendments section.
Okay, I can address this. There's 2 changes here. In the previously adopted bylaws, it said that any proposed amendments that would come from the membership had to be 4 weeks prior to the annual meeting date. Well, since we have to give notice 14 days before the annual meeting, that only left about 2 weeks for us to work with somebody who was proposing an amendment to see that there was consistency and not any overlap and that sort of thing. So we're expanding that to 6 weeks. That would essentially allow a month for the board or the parliamentary advisor or whoever the board wants to work with a member who wants to propose an amendment. So that's the change from 4 to 6. And then the other thing that came up that we are proposing is that there be, we're explaining what the 6 weeks is for, because it wasn't clear what the 6 weeks is for. So it says the 6 weeks is for the purpose of the board or board designated persons to examine a proposed amendment for continuity with, you'll have to scroll for me, Lynn, for conformity with existing governance documents, and as needed, work with those persons proposing an amendment. And see, and then scroll back up into the, let's see. Oh, and then here's a change that you need to think about and really decide whether the board would back this. What we're suggesting here is that if a proposed amendment is submitted to the board, that it should have the backing of at least 10 persons supporting that concept of whatever that amendment is, so that we don't have a situation of just 1 or 2 or 3 people saying whatever their issue is, and then it getting, as it was in the last 2 congregational meetings, we had amendments that took up a lot of time on the floor, but were unanimously voted down. So what it's saying is, let's get at least 10 people be supportive of a proposed amendment coming from the membership, and then it makes it onto the agenda. So that is, those are the 2 changes that we're suggesting in that amendment article. And I believe everything else the board dealt with, which is a lot of it is just housekeeping. And that was what we went through with you all before in the last meeting. So
Yeah, looks
so
like a
what we
lot of
need-
good work.
Yeah, what we need is your go ahead so that we can then put these in the form of a motion, and just by way of adding to that, most of these are housekeeping amendments, and what I've drafted for consideration once all these are approved is putting basically the housekeeping amendments, which might be, I don't know, just say a figure of 6 or 8 or 10, into one motion, in hopes that that motion, once it's put on the floor and all these items are listed, that motion could then be voted on as kind of a housekeeping and non-controversial amendment. And then the other 2 amendments, one of them has to do with sections 7 and 8 in finance that have to do with these contributions that might be, say, real estate or stock or something that's not covered by our existing bylaws with regard to undesignated contributions. And the third amendment would be solely this amendment that we just discussed on the amendments, changing it from 4 to 6 and putting down that it takes 10 members to bring forth a motion from the floor, essentially, by coming to the board to be checked for continuity and clarity, that sort of thing. But that will come to you after you approve all of these amendments that we reviewed last month, and the summary of these 2 that I just did now. Does that seem to cover it, Lynn?
Yes, I just want to clarify that we don't mean like from the literal floor of the annual meeting.
True.
For the 10 members bringing forth a new amendment. I would like to clarify that too, just in case there's people with questions about something. Those would be things that would be either really significant changes to bylaws or new amendments, new bylaws, new things that people would be bringing forth. We're not talking about things like, oh, there's a typo, or have you thought about this or that, or something like that, that the board would consider like maybe in November or December of some time. So, so there could be something that the board would be bringing forward, but things that that somebody else wants to do that would be new or significant amendments. That's what we're talking about with 10 people. Just to be sure that people feel supported when they're bringing something forward in the annual meeting. They know they at least have 10 people behind them in their idea.
Yeah, and there isn't anything that would keep a member from coming to the board and saying, you know, what do you think about this concept or this idea? And if the board said, oh yeah, that's an oversight, that's something we should be addressing, then the board could take it on. It would become a board sponsored amendment. Or the board could say that isn't something that we think would be in the best interest of the congregation, but you're welcome to bring forward that as a proposal along with yourself, you and 9 other persons, to bring that to the board for a member sponsored amendment.
So are we saying then that this is almost in its final form, other than that it just all it needs now is to be put in, as you were talking about it, Tom, the housekeeping items separated from the other items, and that you're going to be working on that?
Well, we can put those in a motion, or we can design the motions to include everything, but the key thing that needs to come from the board for Lynn and I to draft the motions for you to have for the next meeting is for you to, as a board, either to approve or alter all of the documents that Lynn just started. You know, she scrolled through a lot of them, and those are the amendments complete with explanations, sometimes striking out words and other times adding in words. If the board will approve all that, or change those, then Lynn and I will put those in the form of motions that can then be brought out on the floor as board-sponsored amendments.
And we can, Tom has preliminarily done that. He has already separated that based on the idea that you would likely approve most of these things, if not having to tweak something here or there. Yeah. So a significant amount of time he's already put into that, but those are easy fixes if you have things you want fixed. And we can also then clarify those motions or bring those documents to our annual meeting planning meetings. So it's just another time for the board to say, okay, this is what the motions will look like. Because we actually last year, I believe, if I remember correctly, we even assigned ourselves, okay, I'm gonna bring forward this motion and Candace is gonna bring forward this motion. And we had it quite scripted. So those things will occur in our planning meeting.
So are there any amendments that anybody on the board would like to see changed at this point? Or, without objection, we could just, I could just move, say that if there are no objections, we could just give the board's approval right now.
I noticed, I do see a hand up from Gene Larson. If you're willing to entertain comments from non-board members, other than me, I am not a board member. I'm just on this committee with Lynn.
Yeah. Gene, do you have something to say?
Yes, I'm looking at the bylaws, and if someone has an amendment that they want to make this year, it says that amendments which have been submitted to the board in sufficient time to be included in the formal notice of the meeting. And so there does need to be an announcement that goes out to the congregation as to what that date would be, as well as a 14-day notice as to when the meeting will be.
I don't think that is in the bylaws, is it, that requirement?
Well, what's
yes, it's number I of section 1, article 4.
Well, is it required that be that notice go to the congregation 2 weeks before a meeting?
No,
or
but it's
just the announcement of the annual meeting, correct?
Well, what I'm saying is that as a courtesy to the congregation, they should know what the deadline is if they want to make an amendment at the coming up annual meeting.
Can we put that in the board slivers? I don't think it needs to be a special email. It's 4 weeks, right? They have to have a proposed amendment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 4 weeks.
That's what I was remembering also, 4 weeks, but it doesn't say anything about that in the bylaws. It just says submitted to the board in sufficient time to be included in the formal notice of the meeting.
Wait a minute here. I don't think that's correct. I think I'm scrolling through my thing because we were changing 4 to 6. So 4 was existing there. Let me find it.
Well, this is dated 6 of June of 22.
Let's see.
It'd be on the first sentence on the page 7 of 20.
I'm on the amendment section of the bylaws is on page 18 of 20.
No, I'm not talking about the new amendments. I'm talking about the bylaws as they now stand.
Well, the amendment section is Article 16, and that's on page 18 of 20.
Well, I'm looking at the statement it's under congregational meetings, under Article 4, Section 1, sentence I, small I.
Let me go to that one.
Top of page 7.
So one of them talks about congregational meetings. The other one is talking about how to bring forth an amendment for the bylaws. In Article 16, it tells them how to do that, and it's got a 4-week notice, which we're proposing being changed to 6.
Yeah.
But for this year, it's 4 weeks. It doesn't say anywhere that the board has to announce that to the congregation. But we could put it in the board slivers easily that this is the date that would need to be.
Well, you could even, you could make a larger point of it if you chose it. It doesn't have to be just in the board slivers, just as a courtesy of congregation. You could make a special announcement that would be titled member supported amendments or something like that. A 1 or 2 liner.
Yes, because I think that 4-week requirement just came into effect last year, and
yeah, it did.
Yeah, so I think people need to be reminded of that date.
Are you suggesting in the newsletter in the Sun,
or a special email to the congregation?
Well, since it's not a requirement that it be, I mean, it's in the bylaws, it would just be a courtesy that could appear in the Sun, that would be an adequate, just a reminder to the congregation, but there isn't any requirement that the board has to do that, because then you'd say you might as well publish the entire 20 pages of bylaws.
Yeah. I am in favor of putting it in the newsletter or in the slivers. I'm personally not in favor of putting it in an email, but I am deeply biased against email. So I will tell you what my hatred of email is. But I'm happy to submit something to the newsletter with the date.
Yes, that would work.
What is the pleasure of the rest of the board?
That sounds good to me.
That sounds good to me too.
Yeah.
Just in the newsletter, an announcement in the newsletter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just because the section 3 of the existing bylaws says during a congregational meeting, a member may propose an amendment to the articles of incorporation or these bylaws only if the proposed amendment's been previously submitted to the board 4 weeks prior to the meeting date. And that was, the June 5th, 2022 adoption of that clarification at that point. And then what's proposed now is moving it to 6 weeks, and also to say that the amendment would have to have a total of 10 sponsors. That's what's in the proposal.
And that is one of the reasons we moved the May meeting to earlier. Am I correct about? No, well, that's still not enough time.
Well, June 4th is the date. So 4 weeks before, and that's 4 weeks is, 4 times 7. So that defines the date at which something would have to be submitted to the board for examination to see if it's consistent and doesn't have a domino effect with some other stuff or is improperly worded. Last year, there was a motion that was presented that needed some care and attention in order to get it so that it was understandable and so that it didn't have some extraneous information in it. So willing to work with people. It's just that whatever gets on the floor needs to be something that's well thought out and doesn't create any problems in other parts of the bylaws or the ministerial contract.
So it looks to me like that's May 7th. coming up. It's coming right up. So I will do my best to get that into the newsletter. That's today. The date is today, right? For the newsletter. I never can remember when.
Well,
I think it is.
Since this is for the annual meeting, you might want to call Rebecca tomorrow and see if she can get that in there. It's something that would be pretty brief.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I'll do that.
Okay, so you still need, if you all are satisfied, you still need a motion to approve these amendments as going to the being the board recommended amendments to the bylaws that would be going to the congregation, and then we'll worry about putting them in what kind of a format of what kind of motions. But what you need to address is the amendments.
Okay, so without objection, is the board voting in favor, or I make a motion that the board vote in favor of just what Tom said. My brain is turning to mush here. You
could say the amendments as drafted by the subcommittee on policy and procedures as presented to the board.
The amendments as drafted by the policies and procedures as presented to the board. I move that without objection, that be approved.
Do we need a second?
If it's parliamentary procedure for a small board, if there are no objections, then it can just be declared approved. If there are any objections, then it has to have a second, and you have to have a debate and a formal vote.
So are there any objections? Okay, then it is approved. Yay, good. So it looks like we have time for open forum. If anybody has something they'd like to say. Jean, your hand is still up. Do you have something else you wanted to say?
Yes, you probably are wondering what amendment might be coming forth from me. And it has to do with the mention of the Memorial Garden team in the bylaws. It's a team that in the past has been appointed by the board, and they have control over a sizable amount of money, about, $8,000, maybe $6,000 right now. Anyhow, it just seems like it's a committee that should be mentioned in the bylaws. And so I'm going to, compose an amendment to that effect. So I will do that in time for you to talk it over.
I guess to maybe give a little bit of clarity and direction, would you be just suggesting that under the board appointees, that it be clarified that the board appoints members of the Memorial Garden team, or do if you have any more procedural things in mind, that would maybe help people put things in perspective?
Yes, the members might be suggested by the existing team, or they could just be suggested by the board. I think they do that. Isn't the shared ministry team selected by the board or approved by the board? Let's put it that way.
have to check that. I think they're.
It's sort of in consultation with the minister.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, if you propose a concept that you have in mind, then that would be something that the board can work with to see that it's an amendment that kind of is consistent with the rest of the way appointees are done and that sort of thing. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Can I contribute something?
Yes.
Some of you may know I'm running for the UUA position on the UUA nominating committee. I've counted there maybe 75 nominations now, or signatures, including I think maybe 7 from Spokane Church here. But if anyone else wants to, do a signature to support me, the more the merrier. I could send you some instructions. And this is to make a statement that we need people in leadership who are not just part of the one party, which some people call the party of wokeism, or whatever you want to call it. But that's the way it works now. They don't want anyone in leadership at all who's not doing what the woke crowd wants to do. And that's very, very unhealthy. And I had actually applied to be on the nominating committee and was turned down on that. And I made it very clear that I think we need other qualifications than just identity. And that, so
How many signatures do you need?
Well, I need 50 signatures and no more than 10 from any one congregation. And right now I'm getting signatures from all over the country. So I have more than enough, but if you submit more than, it makes than enough, that shows you have greater support. And that always helps.
I'm happy to sign that if you want to email that to me, or let me know how to do it.
Let's see, who's speaking?
Catherine Trust Trail.
Trust Trail. Okay. Do I have your email, or Todd might have it, or someone else?
I'll put it in chat here.
Oh, okay. And the other thing coming up is that this Sunday, April 30th, is the deadline for comments on Article 2 on their proposed revisions. And they have, I think like over 200 comments. And these will become their ideas that they're going to narrow these down to some proposals that will be voted on as amendments in the General Assembly. And I've submitted 5 different amendments myself. Basically, each of my amendments is a rewrite of one of the proposed sections. That's why I have 5 amendments. They don't allow you to just rewrite everything. You have to rewrite one section at a time. But if anyone wants to weigh in on this, you can go into the UUA website and you can say you like a certain proposed amendment, or you have a reply to it, and that will indicate it has stronger support. And so if you want to write this down, my amendment numbers are number 62, 65, 66, 67, and 68. And you can do a search under Burkhart and you'll locate all of them. And this is on a website, and you need to write this down. It's discuss.uua.org, DISCUSS, discuss.uua.org. And once you sign in there, that's a place you can discuss a variety of business things. And you can see something, there'll be a section on Article 2. You can put in your own discussion items, like you could comment on my proposals, you can make your own proposals. You can also just make a comment, like many people are just saying, I don't want any changes, or I want to keep the 7 principles. That's okay also.
When's the deadline for that, Dick? When is the deadline for that?
It's this Sunday.
This coming Sunday, okay.
Right, yeah. And after that, the UUA people are going to be looking at all the comments and trying to consolidate them into some smaller number of amendments that could be proposed during the General Assembly. And many people like me do not want to see the 7 principles submerged or dispersed or whatever, and want them to see as a separate entity. And that's what I do. And there's a section on right now, I think it's on values and covenants. And so I've rewritten that to have a subsection that would start with the 7 principles and another shorter section with something on values. Because I want to see something that would, was be viewed as a positive contribution, not just obstruction. Some people will say, well, don't consider anything they say. But I look carefully at the things people have said, and so I've decided I want to keep a few things about values they said, but I want to keep the principles as they are, except for a few improvements. The idea of principles is they should be very short and concise and succinct. And a few of our current principles are a little bit on the long side. So I try to find ways to shorten them a little bit. So I'm trying to do a good faith effort at revising these things. Whereas some people just say, just vote against everything because you don't know how it's going to turn out. So I'm playing sort of the good cop, bad cop game. I'm the good cop, trying to work with the system. And then there are the bad cops out there who say, just keep the principles as they are and don't do anything because we don't know how it's going to work out. But it is clear that the opposition to what they've written so far, the proposal from the Article 2 Commission, is growing very strongly. I've heard of a number of congregations, many congregations, the minister won't allow any kind of objective discussion. But when the minister has been open and there's been real pro and con, I'm in the congregation discussion back and forth. Most congregations have said, well, we don't like this new stuff. We'd rather keep the old stuff or have some modification of it. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know, the vote at this General Assembly will be, if it's 50%, it does not pass finally, but it goes ahead and will be voted on in the next year, one more year, where it requires two-thirds of vote to actually pass. And the other thing that would happen is that if it gets 50%, but some of these amendments are passed, then the Article 2 subcommission committee, Article 2 committee, would have 6 months to look at all the proposed amendments and maybe put them together in some way to make a revision that might be voted on in another year. It's kind of a complicated situation. Mm-hmm. So some people just want to vote down the whole thing, but others want to say, well, let's see how far we can go and with reason here. And so I'll keep everyone here informed as to how this is playing out right now. But there's this group called the Save the 7 Principles, which is probably the most active dissident group in the UA right now, which Todd knows about, where there's a great deal of discussion on these issues.
Yeah, Dick, I just wanted to say thank you so much for doing this. I do believe there's a chance that the UUA will turn around. The UUA was captured by less than 12 people. Mm-hmm. And it will take less than 12 people to recapture it. And that means that it starts off with people running for these positions. We've had 3 people try to run for the board. You're running for the nominating team. Getting into these positions of influence can retake it. It's going to take some time, but my guess is that as the frustration mounts, people will start voting accordingly. They'll bypass these ministers that have been planted in their churches by the UUA to prevent conversation around this and to deceive congregants as to what's really going on. But the word is getting out.
and we'll have slowly, we'll have 1 or 2 people get elected, then it'll be 4 or 5, and they'll be on key committees, and then they'll be on the board, and eventually the UUA will come around. We'll be able to restore it. And NAUA is here to help assure that liberal religion survives that decade that it may take for that to happen. But I do think it's going to happen. I think that this is a dead end philosophy that they have adopted, and it's going to go nowhere. And sooner or later, it's going to have to come around if it wants to survive. There won't be much left to restore if NAUA isn't around to help hold things together, But eventually, if people like you keep running, and people like Jay Kiskell and Reverend Cease and others who tried to run last year don't have the courage to run, then that's not going to happen. But we can take this back pretty easily if we can get some people in key positions, and that unfortunately is the reality of how institutions are taken over.
Yeah, I think in this case, last year, Beverly Cease and Rebecca Mattis both ran, and they only got 10% of the vote. And that was pretty discouraging. And they also got some personal attacks against them. Jay Kiskell did too, racist and that kind of thing, really nasty stuff. But my feeling is because of the controversy over the 7 principles and the continued cancel culture, like with Kate Rhodey, who I've known for decades.
Yeah.
I think much better. I think this year we'll almost certainly get up to 20%, maybe 25%. Conceivably, I could even win. It's not likely because it's going to be very hard for me to campaign to actually get to all those delegates and congregations. They've sort of blocked all the avenues of communications.
Yeah.
And that's why these things we're going to have to build over time, because they have to build one congregation, one person at once. There's no sort of big public arena where these things can be aired right now. So I doubt if I'll actually win, but I'm very, very certain we'll start a trend, and that will be very good.
That's right.
Definitely.
You can't lose. There is much to be gained just by you running. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dick.
And I also, if you don't know, I listen into all the board meetings, and I've gained some respect with some of the board members. So they, it's much harder for them to demonize me than someone else they don't know about. They know I'm a reasonable person, and I have I think through things carefully and all.
That's right.
So, Dick, one question just to make sure I understand. This 2-year process on the second principle, you said this year it needs 50% to advance, and then next year it would be voted on again, but in order to be adopted would require a 2/3 majority at that point?
Right.
Okay.
And I think we have a very good chance of defeating the 2/3 unless this is revised to something much closer to what I'm proposing, for example. Where if we have something that keeps the 7 principles and doesn't, I've made a key point to keep the 7 principles, but to oppose these covenants, because these covenants have been used in a very vindictive way, accusing people like Todd of being out of covenant without any evidence or reason. They've been used as weapons. Mm-hmm. And then there's a long history of using things like covenants to purge people. That goes way back to Michael Servetus and all.
Yeah. And I never made the covenant. I have no covenant with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there are covenants now with ministers in the Ministerial Association, UUMA.
I didn't make them.
Yeah, but
I violated no covenant. I've made no covenants.
Yeah, but they're if you read their current UUMA bylaws, they expect ministers to agree to a list of 8 different covenants. And they all sound pretty reasonable, but this Reverend Sarah Scotchko attacked UMIAC And I did an analysis, and she severely violated all these 8 covenants, plus some rules of conduct and even some bullying kinds of things. So we submitted a formal complaint to the Ministerial Fellowship Committee about these severe violations. So we're going to sort of turn this around and say, if you want to accuse people of being out of covenant, well, look, Sarah Scotchkill, who's the principal witch hunter in the UUA right now. Yeah. She's violated these things in a very serious way, and we'll see where that leads. You see. If they don't do anything, it will expose a lot of hypocrisy. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not at all against adjourning early if we have no other pressing business. Anything else pressing that somebody would like to discuss?
I just wanted to apologize for coming in so late. I don't know if I texted Todd ahead of time. I found some dogs that were roaming and I got them, but then I was frantically trying to find their home. But they found their home just now, just before I joined. So I was very happy because I didn't have to go to scraps or nothing. They were out searching and I found them. But I wanted to apologize because I'm sorry that I missed the meeting, but I will I'll watch the recording to catch up.
I think the majority of the members on this board are dog lovers.
Yes.
So I showed the pictures and you had us, you know.
I found out that sweet pug's name was Pickles, which was the cutest thing I've ever heard in my life. Pickles. So I was happy that they were reunited, but I was like, oh, let me hop on. So I just apologize for that, but I'm glad to be here for the little bit.
Good work.
Very nice work. Thank you, Lilia. You saved the dogs.
Yay, that's important. Okay, well, sounds like we can say goodnight for this evening, and those of us that are agreeing to meet next Wednesday to talk about putting together the agenda for the annual meeting, we'll all be together next week. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.